right? True aesthetics, true longevity comes from returning to nature. Since we have strayed from nature, we have strayed from health and vitality. As we continue to force ourselves into modern world, into civilization, we become more and more diseased, more and more disconnected. We lack meaning, we're depressed, we're anxious constantly. Our environments are not aligned with our internal state. And when we force our internal environments into a state that does not have any coherence with our external world, we lose sight of what's real. So many people think that they've escaped the so-called matrix. They think that they're living a natural lifestyle because they don't take injections or pharmaceutical drugs, but then they turn around and they take vitamin supplements or inject peptides into their ass. Everyone refuses to take experimental vaccines, but when it comes to experimental peptides, no one bats an eye, and everyone views them as natural for some reason. Looks maxing culture glorifies fast aesthetics, tan bodies, muscles, and a shredded body. And although these are byproducts of a healthy body, when we force the body into this state, we're removing the whole of nature, the intelligence of nature, the connection of our internal body to our external environment, and nothing about this is natural. The long-term effects are unknown, and actually there are effects that are coming out that are known, showing that many of these peptides are extremely harmful for your health. Ozempic, for example, is showing decreased collagen synthesis. So although you might have a shredded body, you'll quickly realize that you'll end up aging quite a lot faster and likely have a lot more health problems that come with it. Experimental peptides are nothing but shortcuts, and to be quite honest, they are nothing but coping. Peptides are nothing but synthetic drugs. They act this way in the body. They act by force. They do not introduce the complexity or the whole of nature into the person. Everything that is achievable through peptides is achievable naturally. A tan, even staying tan year long in the winter time is possible. As my diet has improved, I've been staying tan year round, even though it's winter. It feels like 8 months of the year. I mean, when you look at the Inuit people, right, the North American natives, these people look tan year round. They're extremely dark, and it's because traditionally they eat primarily raw animal-based foods, which is the ideal diet, the ideal natural human diet. And although if your goal is to look like Sam Sulek or Sebum, this is an unnatural amount of muscle. But if you want to look shredded, you want to be cut and strong, through functional training, it is possible to adhere to this using natural principles as well. Some people use peptides to heal their mitochondria. Some people take synthetic dyes, methylene blue, to supposedly heal their mitochondria. The science on these things are quite sparse, and we don't truly understand the long-term effects of a lot of these things that we're taking. Generally, it is best to appeal to nature and take only what is natural in the natural quantities and form. We should not trade longevity and health for temporary vanity, because at the end of the day, you might try to optimize your state in the moment, but we all grow old, and there are things that mean quite a lot more than just the way that you look. Although I will appreciate the importance of how we look and present ourselves and take care of our bodies. We should treat our bodies as temples. However, it makes no sense to inject our temples with synthetic peptides and synthetic drugs that have been untested and are unregulated. Now, everyone's first argument is, oh, well, peptides are natural, they occur naturally in the body. And the argument's very similar to the vitamin argument. They say, oh, well, vitamins are natural because they exist in foods. But to isolate vitamin C, you have to add a ton of synthetic compounds. So we don't understand how this alters the sample, right? This does not adhere to true science. And when you isolate a vitamin, you're losing the complexity of nature. You're losing the food matrix. You're losing the essence of the food itself. And just because you could take this little white powder called ascorbic acid and reduce scurvy symptoms doesn't mean that it's natural. It means that you are temporarily suppressing the symptoms, and this is what pharmaceutical drugs do. And again, to create peptides, right, for them to enter the body and be useful in the body, they have to alter them. People don't understand how synthetic the creation of peptides truly are. We're using benzo compounds, floral compounds. We use things like dimethylformide, dichloromethane, diethyl ether, trifluoroacetic acid. We use benzo compounds, hexafluorophosphate compounds, tetramethyluronium compounds. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a totally unnatural process. And when they enter the body, they're forcing processes. Regardless of what the body needs, the balance of the body is required. And so if anything, we're completely throwing off the ecology and intelligence of the body by forcing it to undergo different processes. Now, of course, in the case of a type 1 diabetic, although I do know individuals who take barely any insulin because they're on a strict raw animal-based diet, even though they've been diagnosed with type 1, not medical advice. For the most part, Type 1s, due to their loss of pancreas function, they do need to take insulin, which is a peptide. That being said, again, we are still trying to mimic what the body is requiring. And this, again, is acting in a pharmaceutical fashion, right? We're not actually supporting the environment and the terrain of the body. And when we force the body to do something, right, if you think of it from a purely biological fashion, it must pull from somewhere else, right? If you eat the proper inputs that allow your skin to adapt and be tanned year round, if you're consuming raw fish, raw animal-based foods year round, and you sit by the fire every single night, you're giving the body the proper inputs to be able to stay tanned rather than forcing the body into this state. And again, the effects, long-term effects, are absolutely unknown because these are experimental drugs. And I'm sure that at some point when it can be capitalized on by the pharmaceutical companies, they will grab a hold of them and they will be selling these. It's just a matter of time. Just because the gray market got there first doesn't mean that you are fighting against the system or that you've escaped the matrix in any capacity. If anything, you are still living like a slave in the modern world. When it comes to improving the aesthetics of your lives, you do want to be aesthetic, but you want to have this long term, right? You want to grow old gracefully, because no matter what Brian Johnson tells us, we will grow old and we will complete the cycle of life at some point. And so the true way to achieve this is to give the body the proper natural diet and environment, right? We need to spend more time in nature, lower our stress level, spend more times outdoors instead of the stagnant air of the indoor world. We need to remove the processed junk from our lives, stealing our energy and vitality. These are the important principles that allow us to age gracefully while remaining aesthetic as possible, without forcing our bodies to do things. And this is the crux of the conversation. Being a slave to the peptide, to the pharmaceutical industry, to the Botox, to plastic surgery, it's all the same concept. It's all the slave mindset, right? True aesthetics, true longevity comes from returning to nature. Since we have strayed from nature, we have strayed from health and vitality. As we continue to force ourselves into modern world, into civilization, we become more and more diseased, more and more disconnected. We lack meaning, we're depressed, we're anxious constantly. Our environments are not aligned with our internal states. And so when we force our internal state into when we force our internal environments into a state that does not have any coherence with our external world, we lose sight of what's real. And then it's such a wonder why we're all so sick and depressed, right? And we do things like this, right? Because this is the same implications when it comes to vitamins, when it comes to synthetic supplements, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, when it comes to Botox or plastic surgery. And we can continue to cope using these things. We can do them psychologically, we can do them physically. Often they go hand in hand. A true return to nature requires a true understanding of ourselves on a deeper level, doing that deeper psychological, spiritual work, connecting with source, connecting to what is real. If you are interested in learning why synthetic vitamins do not exist, or why specific peptides are so harmful, what kind of things they can actually do to the body, how we do not and misunderstand these things, I would strongly suggest you join the Beyond Terrain Academy. That is where we dive in and we get specific with this discussion. It is a great place to have this rite of passage of return to nature, right? A true return to nature, return to holism, return to ourselves. That is the whole essence of the Academy. There's no shilling of supplements. There are live sessions, written content, audio content, as well as recordings for your learning. No topic is off limits. And so I would strongly suggest everyone go check that out. We are actually doing a Black Friday sale. You can use the code Black Friday to get 20% off your first year in the Academy. But trust me, you're probably going to want to stay longer. And if you don't, and you get what you need, I do hope that you graduate with a sense of sovereignty, with a sense of returning to nature, with confidence, clarity, and meaning. One of the main reasons that I created this academy was because of the sale and the push for peptides, synthetic vitamins, synthetic supplements. All of these things were being sold constantly as natural alternatives. But the reality is we're just using this greenwash pharmaceutical industry, right? We're actually supporting a lot of these pharmaceutical laboratories that create many of these things. Even off the gray market, you're still supporting the whole industry, this pharmaceutical, industrial, medical industry. The return to nature begins with action. We have to implement these things into our daily habit. Our lifestyle is our medicine, and you're either living in accordance with the natural terrain, with the natural world, or you're doing the opposite, and then you're tending towards disease and death. There are only two directions of which your body can adapt to. And when we study the ancestral people, none of them have these modern diseases. Modern diseases only come around and they're worsening because of the increased use of synthetic compounds as well as synthetic habits in the modern world. When it comes to the discussion of peptides, we have this guise of looks maxing and optimizing our lives, but we are so misaligned that what looks like optimization is actually harmful long-term to our bodies. We're throwing off the balance of our bodies. We're forcing our bodies to do things that it does not necessarily want or need to do. And you can do all of these things naturally. You do not need plastic surgeries. You do not need peptides. You do not need synthetic vitamins. All you need is nature. Many people say, oh, the literature looks good. Look at the scientific literature on it. This is the same scientific literature and methods that pharmaceutical companies use. So if you're saying that you trust the literature, you trust the science on peptides, but you don't trust the science about pharmaceuticals, you are again being a hypocrite. But if you don't trust the literature and science that proves vaccines to be safe and effective, this is the same thing that proves peptides to be safe and effective. They use the same experimental methods. And again, there isn't a vast amount of literature on this either. There are good scientific papers out there, but not many people read them, unless people even understand the scientific method, how it truly works from a true Popperian falsification standpoint. Most people just appeal to authority. They see that it's published in a so-called prestigious journal, and then they trust everything that the abstract and the discussion says. But the abstract and the discussion are the least scientific part of a paper. You need to look at methods and results, and even those can be biased and skewed. Statistical manipulation is a real problem in the literature, which is something that we'll also be discussing in the Beyond Terrain Academy very soon. And so I hope that I have dissuaded some of you from taking peptides. This is just cope. We can cope physically. Often there are psychological underpinnings here. And if you want to work through some of that, we can work together one-on-one, so do not hesitate to reach out. But at the end of the day, true longevity and vitality comes from a return to balance, a return to our true selves. And I hope that I have made this point in this video. Nature does not work by force. It acts through adaptation. And if you continuously adapt to the injection of synthetic peptides into your system, you will inevitably lead yourself directly into a diseased state. We continuously try again and again to find the so-called magic bullets of the world. The only true magic bullet is a return to nature. It's the only thing that will guarantee you health, longevity, and vitality. And the modern world has a perfect track record of failing you. Synthetic compounds always fail in the long run. They can only keep the story going for so long. Hope that you have all enjoyed this video. Make sure to go check out the Academy. But I appreciate you all for taking the time. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, guys. Take care.